Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Zen and the Art of SOLIDWORKS Surfacing, presented by the DiMonte Group. My name is Andrew Lowe. I'm a senior industrial designer. I've been using SOLIDWORKS for almost 15 years now. Do rough surfaces have you on edge? Got a kink in your spline? Zen out and come to really understand how SOLIDWORKS surfacing works. Using advanced techniques, I'll demonstrate surface modeling workflows that allow you to quickly and easily create the most challenging of shapes. Located just outside Chicago, Illinois, the DiMonte Group is a full-service product development consultancy offering industrial design, design engineering, electrical engineering, and software development services. Welcome to another installment of Zen and the Art of SOLIDWORKS Surfacing, where we'll continue modeling the handle that we started in the last video installment. Let's jump into SOLIDWORKS. So in the previous video, we worked on the large portion of the handle here, as well as the area that transitioned the handle into the trigger area of this flashlight. In this video, we're going to take a look at completing the rest of this shape and blending all of these edges into this edge here, along with our two profile edges. So this is where we left off from the last video. We've created the main portion of the handle here where the bulk of your hand goes, created this boundary surface and this five-sided surface fill that acts as the transition between the main handle shape and the flat area that the trigger protrudes from. In this video, we're going to complete the shape by creating the surfaces that transition the handle into the top portion of this flashlight. So the first surface we'll build is a relatively straightforward boundary surface. We're simply going from one profile in direction 1 between the profiles here in direction 2. Not going to worry about what this looks like. We'll just let SOLIDWORKS fill in that information. Continuing on, we need to just basically clean up that unsupported edge. And the way we're doing that is by extending the surface and then trimming it back. So now we have a really nice clean transition here, and we can continue adding surface features. So now that we've actually created this face here, we need to do a little bit of housekeeping on this flat face here. We're actually going to get rid of it. It's no longer required. And then we'll generate a new sketch, and we're going to convert this new model edge into the model along with these other model edges. And we're going to use these in this closed perimeter to create a planar surface. So we're creating a planar surface for our trigger flat, and we'll do some additional detailing later to finish up this area. But for now, we're going to move on to the other side of the handle, and we're going to create a boundary surface. And here's a boundary surface that is overbuilt and get trimmed back. Ultimately, I wasn't happy with making this out of one big boundary surface, so I wanted to break it up. But instead of just trying to drag back this connector and trying to, drag this back, I just made a much larger surface between these whole surface edges, and then we're going to trim this back, and then we'll come back in with a surface fill to complete this shape. So this is an example here of a three-sided boundary surface. This is just whatever SOLIDWORKS is going to give us. I have set curvature to face here and curvature to face here such we have a G2 connection on this new surface. And then I'm coming in with the trim tool and trimming that away. So we're just left with a much smaller portion here, and ultimately we'll use a surface fill to complete this. Now I could use a surface or a boundary surface here between this partial edge once knitted. Actually, let's do that right now. From this edge to this series of 3 edges, but I can find sometimes it doesn't like combining 3 edges into 1 edge, and the surface fill could give us a better result here. So I am going to be using the surface fill. Ultimately, I only need a tangent on the surface fill, and I'm setting tangency to the draft reference surface here, this existing model edge of the handle, this existing model edge, and then these 3 edges of the top shape. I'm not going to be using a guide surface because the result I got was more than acceptable, so I'm just setting these to contact end condition. And ultimately, I was really happy with what this looked like. I turned on the zebra stripes command to evaluate, and I had a really, really nice G2 or higher connection here. We can't see any breaks or sharp edges in our line, so we're really happy with what this looks like. I've got no problems with this. So we're going to move on and continue forming this handle shape. We've got a couple more details we need to add. So here I needed to extend this front face down, and I was extending this down such that I could trim it back. So we'll finish up this handle by creating this final portion that completes this handle shape. And I have created, or actually knitted, some of these faces in as a whole. I had to extend this face down before the extend
It could just kind of end it here, but ultimately there'll be a nice arced transition between here and here. And so I created the surface extend, and then I did need to create a curve, and I did this by projecting a arc between this edge and this vertice onto this extended face. So it gives me a curve that I can work with, and then this is going to be an end curve for a boundary surface. So this boundary surface is going to be between this the curve we just created and this edge here, unsupported in the other two directions. This will form the underside of this area, and we do need to come in and trim this back. So we're extending it a little bit on either side, just so when we trim it back, it's the right size. This is a mutual trim, so I'm using the mutual trim option to trim away the extra material on this, leaving me with a shape or with this edge here. And ultimately now what we need to do is create a spline between here and here that will complete this shape. And this is something I don't rarely use, but this was a perfect opportunity for it. And this was a 3D sketch with the Spline On Surface command. So a lot of the time I find that the Spline On Surface command doesn't really work well. It can be really difficult to work with, but I didn't really want to use a projected curve or anything here. I did want to have a little more control, so I created that. So the way this works is you create a Spline On Surface, kind of start it here. I find that it's nice to add a midpoint here. Even if you're not going to use the point, it kind of gives an idea to SOLIDWORKS of where it wants to be. So I'll come back in now that's not needed and delete that. And then I did come in and actually make that tangent here. I didn't really like that. Maybe I wanted that point. So we'll just go back to the original sketch that I had before I deleted that style spline. And here we can see that I was able to make it tangent. It didn't blow up. So a perfect example of why I try and avoid this wherever possible. But in this case, it did work out for me. And I have a tangent connection between this edge and our 3D spline on surface. And now that we've created this, we can use this as a split line tool. You can't actually trim with this for some reason, so you do have to create a split line with that 3D sketch, and then you can use delete face. And finally, I'm left with a three-sided surface. Don't want to use the boundary surface here because three-sided boundary surfaces cause issues where the profiles converge at this degenerate point. So what we're going to do is use surface fill, because surface fill builds a four-sided shape. If we turn on our mesh preview, you can kind of see ultimately what that would be. It's building a nice kind of four-sided shape here and trimming it back to fit our boundary. So this is a perfect example of where to use surface fill instead of the boundary surface. And here we go. We've completed all of the surfaces of our handle. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this installment of Zen and the Art of SOLIDWORKS Surfacing. Be sure to check out the example SOLIDWORKS files on the DiMonte Group website linked in the description below. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. Happy SOLIDWORKS surfacing.